guys, welcome to another episode of Tech Tuesday. I am talking to Charlie Greene with Remento, and we first met at CES. I actually tried to do a little interview with him, but I had some technical difficulties with my sound, and so we're going to sort of repeat that plus some. But before we get started, this. Hey guys, Steve Moran here. Charlie, welcome. Let's start out by talking a little bit about who you are, what your passion is, what you're working on.
Well, Steve, we had a really good interview at CES, so I'm bummed that didn't go through, but I'm happy to be back here. Thank you again so much for having me today. At CES, we were Remento was stationed within the AARP Age Tech Collaborative booth, which was a really cool installation, and we had a chance to share our technology with folks passing through. Our company's called Remento. It's like the words remember and memento combined. And we make it incredibly easy for parents and grandparents and even great-grandparents to document their memories and stories in physical hardcover books without having to do any writing whatsoever. So we build technology that will interview our loved ones. They just speak their answers to questions that we come up with, questions that you come up with, or questions they pick themselves. And we take all of their spoken responses and turn them into a hardcover physical keepsake book of their memories and their stories for you to carry forward for future generations. And we also include little QR codes printed inside the books that when you scan will play the recording that was used to write each one. So for mom, for dad, for your grandparents, it's a book that wrote itself, a memoir, without having to do any writing. And then for you, it's both having that physical keepsake, but it's also being able to have, their voice right at your fingertips forever into the future.
Okay, so I'm going to start by saying that I actually went ahead and purchased a subscription for my wife.
Okay.
She is struggling, honestly, and I'll tell you why. It turns out that even when you've got a voice prompt, it's sort of intimidating to be able to just sit and talk into the computer. How do people get around that?
It really depends on the first question that's being asked. I'm curious, did she pick some of the questions or did you pick them for her?
I picked some of the questions, and I actually have not gone back in, and so I don't know what the first question was that it was delivered to her. You might even be able to help me with that. Would it typically be something I would add or something that the system would generate?
Well, we give you the option to do either one. And our recommendation is always to pick something that we would call a softball. Pick something that's easy, that's light, a memory that would bring a smile to your face, and be something that maybe folks haven't heard before. So one of our favorite questions to ask first-time storytellers is, tell us about your favorite room in your childhood home. And that's because when people think back, for many of us, we smile when we think about that story. And it's something that maybe we haven't talked about to our partner or to our kids. So our recommendation is to pick a softball, an easy question to get started. My favorite way to get started, and sometimes this takes a little bit more work, but it's well worth it, is to upload a photograph. So Remento prompts can either be open-ended questions or they can be photos. And so my favorite way to get someone started is to put in front of them through Remento a photograph that maybe they haven't seen in a while. Maybe it's a recent photo, maybe it's a photo from their childhood, and ask them to share the memory behind that moment. And that often leads to storytelling that is both really meaningful for the storyteller to share, but it's also really meaningful because you get to hear their story against this photo that maybe you didn't know the story behind.
Okay, so I love this a lot. How I guess maybe one of the questions that I have that I don't really know the answer to is let's take your question, right? Favorite room as a childhood. How long would a typical answer for a question like that be?
It totally varies. We have some storytellers who speak in 30-second recordings, right? They're very focused on sharing the details of exactly what was happening, in a photo, or speaking exactly about that bedroom. And then we have other people who speak for up to 30 minutes, which is the upper limit for how long you can record in a single session. And I would say it really varies. The average is probably around 7 minutes for our average story length. But our perspective is there's no right or wrong way to tell a story. If you're long-winded, share a long-winded story. If you are short-winded, get right to the details that matter most. Again, the most important thing is to get started and to do so in a way that feels natural.
Okay, and can I do this on either my cell phone or my laptop, tablet, or what? Are there any limitations?
If it's a device that has internet and a microphone, you can use it to record a story on Remento without any downloads, logins, or passwords. So one of the first things that we did when we were testing is we created a mobile app for our product. And what we realized is that if grandma has to figure out an Apple ID account to be able to download an app, it's never going to happen. And we saw that firsthand. And so the way Remento interacts with our storytellers is we'll send a text message and an email with a big button that says record now. When you click on that button from a smartphone, from a tablet, or from a laptop computer, when you click on that button, it will bring you into our recording experience, which is fully private, but without any passwords. And all you have to do is press start recording and then start speaking. And it really is as simple as that. And that's the reason that the vast majority of our storytellers have no technical issue using our product. And we have many storytellers, I kid you not, who are over the age of 100 years old, who are recording their own stories every week and finding a lot of joy in doing so.
Okay, so I got another question. I hope you don't mind me going into all the details on this because I'm really curious. We do a lot of video work on our platform, and so and frankly, like these interviews are like a piece of cake for me. I do these, I do about 100 of these a year, plus lots of interviews at places like CES. But I still struggle when if it's just me talking to the camera. I don't like that so much. And so, what happens if I'm like in the middle of the story and I get, oh no, I got that all wrong. Do I need to start over? Will the AI fix it? What happens?
Well, for a lot of people, I should say for some people, we speak in paragraphs. And by we, I mean some of those people, because I don't, right? We tell a story where we begin at the beginning and we end at the end, and we know exactly how the story is going to unfold. And that is a group of people that are in the minority. The majority of us tell a story and we realize midway through that we forgot a detail from the beginning, and then we realize that the beginning was actually wrong. So we retell the beginning and then we end, but then we go back to the middle. And what you realize is the transcript of that is a total mess. And there's nothing wrong with that, but the transcript of that conversation, that recording, is not something that you'd actually want printed into a book. And so with Remento, we give you 3 options for what we actually include in your physical book. One is a cleaned transcript. And some people say, I want exactly my words as they came out of my mouth in my book. And we take some liberties. We'll remove words like and ah. We'll add punctuation. We'll create paragraphs. But otherwise, it's exactly the words that came out of your mouth verbatim into the book. The vast majority, though, of our customers take advantage of our second and third option, which uses our speech-to-story technology to take all of that transcript and actually restructure it in a way that maintains your word choice, the way you told the story, but actually writes it in a way that would look a lot like if you had hired a professional writer to take your interview and turn it into the kind of writing you would want into a book. And so it's actually quite common. We hear this from many of our customers who say, I want exactly my words in this book, or I want exactly my dad's words in this book. And then what they see is those words and they say, actually, this is a total mess. Let's use the technology to restructure it. And then when they do, they say, this is written even better than members of my family or myself actually could. So we give folks the ability to switch in between. You can pick one version for one story and different versions for others.
Okay, so my wife actually wrote out a bunch of stories. And so I'm going to actually, before I get to this, let me ask one other question. If I've already got a story written out, can I just paste it in?
Yeah, you can. You have to record something. All of our stories that end up in our books have to have some recording associated with them. So you can upload a multi-paragraph essay if you want. You just have to have some recording associated with it. And it could be as short as a couple words.
Okay, great, perfect. So anyway, so she actually took something she'd written and she read it. And she's a pretty good writer. And then when she looked at it, she thought, I don't really like it that much. So I actually took it and I asked AI to do a little bit more cleanup on it. I can't remember what, I think I used Claude, but it doesn't matter. And then just for fun, I gave it two other personalities. I asked it to rewrite it in the voice of Anne Lamott. I don't know whether that's a name that's familiar to you, but she's somebody who my wife likes. And then there's a guy by the name of Sean Dietrich, who does these Southern storytellers that I really liked. And so I actually had her redo it. So I gave her three versions of it. Do you have any notion of maybe being able to name a writer that somebody likes and say, well, I want my stories to be told in that version?
We fully support you doing anything like that you want on your own. But I would say what we hear from most of our customers is, I want this to sound like me.
Got it.
Right? Or I want this to sound like my dad. And so AI has made it really exciting to be able to take your voice, your stories, and turn it into the writing of an American novelist, if you wanted to, as an example. I would say for most of the people that come to Remento, what they're saying is, I want this to sound like my dad, because these are the stories that I want to pass down to my kids. And I want them to be able to read these words and feel like he's sitting right there. And then I want to be able to scan that QR code and actually hear his voice as if he was telling us that story himself.
Oh, okay. So here's my next question. Oh, you already got my juices going. So how about I were to sit with my folks are all gone, so it'd be hard for me. I can't do this. But what if I were to sit with my wife and ask her to tell me a story and then ask follow-up questions? Can I do that? And would that work okay?
100%. Yeah, you can sit there and do that yourself. You can do that yourself and just ask follow-up questions directly, and Remento will be able to understand kind of like the back and forth, and it will take all of the answers and create that written piece. We're also going to be rolling out in the next couple of weeks actually follow-up questions built into the product. You know, we have a scientific advisory board of professional storytellers and memory scientists who advised us, and what they've helped us understand is that in professional interviewing, the things that make a professional interview incredible are not the questions that are generated before the interview. They are the questions that are generated in response to things that are said. It is the follow-up question. It is asking for that extra detail that was missed out in the preliminary response.
Well, you're describing what we're doing right here, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like the opening question, you asked a great opening question, but we're getting into it now. And this is where the gems are. And right. So what we're building into Remento is what we call conversational interviewing, which means you're not filling out a survey of your life that you speak into, but Remento is actually learning about you as you tell your stories and is asking you to share more about the things that maybe you didn't realize would be important. But we know from our experience and from the people that advise us around telling great stories are so critical to being able to tell a story that will actually resonate with your audience.
So when somebody is done, so as I understand that they have a year to do this, right, on a basic contract, and they can extend that if they need to. But in a year's period of time, how many stories would somebody typically tell? How big would the book be? That kind of thing.
Yeah, the product costs $99. It includes 1 year of telling as many stories as you want and a credit for a hardcover color printed book. And to your point, if you want more time, you can pay for more time. And if you want more books, you can buy more books for your entire family. And it's not uncommon for us to see 25 books ordered for a family because, again, this is a multi-generation keepsake in the way that it's designed to be passed down within a family. But to your point around kind of averages, there are some people who, when they sign up, decide they want to answer one question every week for a year. That feels like the right amount of work, not too much. We have other people who say, you know what, I would really like to get a head start, a jump start on this project, and maybe I want to finish the entire book in 1 month. And for those people, they are motivated for different reasons. Some are, type A, super A. They just want to be done with the project. There are other people who come to us and say, I don't know if I have a full year. I'm creating this for my family or for myself because I realize I'm not going to be around to tell these stories. Maybe I've got a difficult diagnosis that I'm facing. And so those people approach the assignment with a very different perspective on the timing. And I would say generally there are people who will record, a dozen stories. And we have people who will tell literally hundreds of stories. Our books can be up to 380 pages and they can be printed across multiple volumes. I would say the longer books tend to be when someone has uploaded like hundreds of photographs and they're basically going one by one and telling the stories behind the photos, one at a time in a really meaningful way. We call that kind of like a narrated photo album that you're creating. And then, we have other people who will approach this project saying, I really want to create a book around, my career, like my reflections on my career. And maybe there are 15 things that I really want to talk about. And so my book is going to have 15 stories. Each one is kind of like one of the key values or lessons learned from my career. So yeah, it really varies on the person, but we celebrate people telling stories in any capacity that they're willing to.
Yeah, so I really like this a lot, and you're giving me some ideas with my wife. She's got a younger sister who passed away early from breast cancer, and she has a number of pictures of them together that are really special to her. And now I hadn't really thought about it until we've had this conversation, but I'm thinking to upload some of those pictures and then to just have me sit and talk with her about her sister Michelle and their adventures. They did some growing up in France, and they made a later trip to Europe, and just wonderful, wonderful stories to really enhance that. So I really like that a lot. So let's actually talk a little bit about your competition. Storyworth has been out there for a long time. It's a written thing. I think there's at least one other competitor that I'm aware of. And I will say I did buy yours. So talk to me about the differences between the platforms. Why is yours better?
Well, it turns out there are dozens of companies that are offering effectively what Storyworth has been offering for over a decade at this point, which is a physical book that gets created based on written responses to prompts on a weekly basis for a year. And Storyworth gets a ton of credit because they created this category in the first place. Yep. And in the conversations that we've had with storyteller customers who have actually used the product to create their book, the feedback is incredible. The purpose that someone who never thought they'd be able to write a book, but now has actually written one is amazing. I spoke to a woman who donated copies of her book to her local library because of the amount of pride that she had with having been able to create this legacy piece. And the reality is that for many of us, even a structured writing assignment still feels like a lot of work. I asked my mom to write a memoir about her memories and her stories. And she told me, if you want one of these books, why don't you write it yourself? And so we created Remento because we believe that technology could be used to do something that so many of us want to do with our families, but for a lot of reasons don't. And for many of us, it's because of the amount of work involved. And so the question we asked ourselves from the very beginning was, what if writing a book didn't require any writing at all? And our company has been built from the foundation to make that process easier than it's ever been. And we are always investing in the most cutting edge, newest technology to make the process of writing your life stories an easier, more accessible process. Again, that can be done by people who are in many cases over the age of 80, 90, even 100.
That is so cool. I have you ever seen, it seems like it would be really, I see two really interesting sort of non-traditional applications for this. So as I think my audience is primarily people who own and operate, who are leaders in the senior living space. I find myself wondering, could we, for instance, could I take a senior living community and do a book? So maybe I do a 2026 book where I just do one story with each resident in the community who wants to participate. And we have a 2026 book of stories from the residents. And then we do a 2027, 2028. Could we do something like that?
100%. And there are a couple of reasons that we're really excited about the senior living community broadly as an opportunity for us to engage with. One of the reasons is because we know in the United States, instances of loneliness, isolation, and depression are increasing among our aging population, irrespective of if they're living in senior living facilities or not. And so there is a tremendous amount of science that speaks to the actual process of sharing about your past, telling stories, being something that individually is meaningful, can decelerate the acceleration of cognitive impairment, dementia, and Alzheimer's. But it's also got an incredible opportunity to be able to create connection among our peers. And so the example that you gave is exactly right. We are piloting with a couple of senior living facilities storytelling as a service that can be offered and integrated into the DNA of one of these facilities, so that you don't have to worry about you don't have to rely on the happy hour to be able to understand who your neighbors are. We can actually help you understand who you live with in a way that is structured and organized, that can create a book. And it allows members of the community who care for our seniors to be able to provide more personal and more human services, because they can actually learn about who these people are. And I would say the last thing that gets us really excited is the feedback that we hear from people who use our product. Is in many cases, I didn't have any idea that that was the experience of my grandfather, or I had no idea how similar my grandmother was to me when she was in elementary school. We actually both wanted to be the same thing, or we both had crushes on our 6th grade math teacher, right? And so one of the most beautiful things that happen when families use Remento is not only creating a book to become valuable in the future, but actually using the process of discovering new things about our seniors as a way of bringing families closer together. And so we are really excited to be able to install Remento within senior living facilities as a way of facilitating intergenerational connection between the folks that live in these communities and their families in a way that hopefully really increases quality of life. And we feel bullish could also materially impact health outcomes because of all of the science that shows people who are more connected, more engaged, more intellectually stimulated have better health outcomes across virtually all ways of measuring.
Yeah, it's such an interesting thing. My father passed away about 3 years ago, and I led his memorial service. It was outdoors in a place where he would have loved. And somebody got up and started talking to him. And one of them said, well, I think it was maybe his last remaining sister who was still alive, who said something like, he was a emergency room physician. He was a really, really good doctor, had a great reputation. And whoever it was, I wish I could remember who it was, talked and said, he was a great doctor, but he really wanted to be, if he could have been anything that he wanted, if he didn't have parental and pressure, he probably would have been a forest ranger. And I was something I didn't know. I mean, I knew he loved the outdoors and that was really his happy place, but to actually hear that, and I thought, oh yeah, I can see that. So being able to capture those things, I never heard it from him. It is amazing. I love that. Yeah. We're just about out of time. Talk to me a little bit about, let's just sort of talk about how people would find you, how people would get started, how senior living operators might connect in a sort of a different way.
Yeah, well, we're doing a lot of partnership work in the senior living community right now. So if you're interested in learning more about how Remento could support your community, please reach out to partnerships@remento.co or to me directly, charlie@remento.co. We feel really bullish on the opportunity for storytelling as a service to become really the part of the DNA of what makes your facility, these facilities, so special. And it can bring a lot of joy, a lot of happiness, but hopefully a lot of very meaningful kind of evidence-based outcomes to your facility. So please reach out to partnerships@remento.co. We would love to explore getting something stood up. And again, we have a variety of different ways of engaging, and so we'd be really really excited to do that. And our website is remento.co.co. And again, it's like Remento, remember, plus memento combined into one word.
Yeah, so I really would recommend this. I think the one thing that you'd find yourself being able to do with this is collect stories that would talk about changed lives that you could use in your marketing campaign. The stories happen every day or at least every week in every community. We're terrible about capturing them. Even when we capture them, we don't tell them very well. That's where the AI comes in, is to be able to take these extraordinary stories and be able to retell them in ways that have great power. So Charlie, I applaud what you're doing, and thank you for joining me so that we could redo this. Thanks to Jada for being in the background to produce the show, and we will be back on Friday with a great leadership show.
Thanks, Steve. It's a pleasure's all mine.